The snow was falling hard enough to blur the streetlights when the little boy suddenly broke free, his small boots slipping as he ran straight toward the woman on the bench, and the father followed without hesitation, not knowing that in those few seconds his carefully controlled life was about to fracture and reform into something unrecognizable. That single, reckless run through the snow carried more weight than any decision he had made in years, and as his heart pounded and his breath burned, something deeper than fear stirred inside him, something he had buried long ago. Before the story unfolds any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that can happen on the coldest nights, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel so more stories like this can reach hearts that are waiting to be moved. His name was Nathan Caldwell, and he lived his life with rigid precision in a small town outside Madison, Wisconsin, where winter arrived early and stayed longer than most people wanted. Nathan believed control was survival, a lesson he learned years earlier when his marriage collapsed under the weight of grief after his wife Hannah passed away from a sudden illness. Since then, his world had narrowed to routines, schedules, and quiet evenings, all centered around keeping his son Oliver safe from pain, disappointment, and unpredictability. Love, to Nathan, had become a fragile thing, something to guard carefully rather than risk freely. That evening, the snowstorm had caught them by surprise. They had stopped at a small park on the walk home, the kind with a single wooden bench and old trees wrapped in white lights for the holidays. Nathan had been checking his phone, calculating the fastest route back, when Oliver slipped from his mittened hand and ran. The boy was drawn by something Nathan did not see at first, something instinctive and urgent. By the time Nathan looked up, Oliver was already halfway across the snow-covered path, his laughter echoing into the dark. The woman on the bench looked out of place and yet completely at home in the falling snow. Her name was Grace Whitaker, though Nathan would not know that until later. She wore a bright pink sweater beneath a heavy black coat, a green skirt dusted with snow, and tall black boots that crossed neatly at the ankle. A deep red handbag sat beside her, and her face carried a softness that contrasted with the cold night. She had been waiting there for over an hour, watching families pass, wondering how her life had come to such a quiet, uncertain pause. Grace had once imagined a different future. She grew up in Ohio, raised on faith, forgiveness, and the belief that broken things could be restored. But life in Chicago had hardened her, and a painful divorce followed by years of loneliness pushed her into a kind of emotional exile. She had moved to Wisconsin for a fresh start, working at a local community center, trying to rebuild her sense of purpose. That night, she sat on the bench not because she had nowhere to go, but because she was afraid to return to an empty apartment that echoed too loudly with memories. When Oliver reached her, he stopped abruptly and looked up, his cheeks red, his breath fogging the air. He clutched a worn teddy bear to his chest, the same one he had slept with since Hannah's funeral. Grace felt something shift inside her as she looked at him, a sudden warmth spreading through the cold. She smiled instinctively, not realizing how long it had been since she had done so without effort. Nathan arrived moments later, breathless and apologetic, his instincts screaming danger even as his eyes took in the harmless scene before him. He reached for Oliver, but the boy leaned back slightly, as if rooted in place by something unseen. Nathan noticed then the way Grace looked at his son, not with curiosity or pity, but with recognition, as though she saw something familiar in his small, hopeful face. Snow continued to fall as time slowed, and Nathan found himself staying longer than he intended. He did not sit, but he did not leave either. The park felt suspended between moments, as if the world had decided to hold its breath. He noticed the woman's gloved hands trembling slightly, the quiet strength in her posture, and the sadness she carried without letting it define her. For the first time in years, Nathan felt his defenses soften, not out of weakness, but out of something braver. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed again and again, first by coincidence and then by choice. They met at the community center where Grace worked, at the same grocery store, and eventually on that same bench, now familiar and less lonely. Oliver grew attached quickly, his laughter returning in fuller waves, his questions more curious than cautious. Nathan watched these changes with both gratitude and fear, unsure whether he could trust happiness again. Grace never pushed, never asked Nathan to explain his past or promise a future. She simply showed up, steady and present, offering warmth without expectation. She reminded Nathan of the faith he once had, not just in God, but in people, in love, and in the idea that loss did not have to be the final chapter. Slowly, Nathan began to let go of the rigid control that had defined him, learning that protecting his son also meant allowing him to experience connection and joy. The real test came one night when Oliver fell ill during another snowstorm, and Nathan found himself overwhelmed by fear he could not manage alone. Grace came without hesitation, bringing soup, calm reassurance, and a quiet prayer whispered more through action than words. In that moment, Nathan realized that his life had already changed, not dramatically, but deeply, reshaped by kindness that asked for nothing in return. As spring approached, the snow melted from the park, but the bench remained, now a symbol rather than a refuge. Nathan, Grace, and Oliver walked hand in hand through a future that was still uncertain but no longer empty. Faith did not erase their scars, but it taught them how to carry them with grace. Love did not arrive all at once, but it grew patiently, rooted in compassion and trust. If this story has reached into your heart, if it reminded you that even the coldest seasons can lead to unexpected beginnings, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who may need encouragement, and subscribe so you do not miss more stories of hope and redemption. Before this story ends, we ask you to comment below and tell us whether you believe one small act of kindness can truly change a life. Nathan never forgot the night his son ran into the snow, because that was the night he learned that God sometimes works through moments we cannot control, leading us not away from fear, but straight through it, toward a life transformed by love.